Hey babe, you know what? You survived what should have annihilated everything that came before you. Not just your immediate existence, but legacies, bloodlines, entire timelines built on fragile assumptions of endurance. You absorbed catastrophes that would have dissolved entire families, erased names from the pages of memory, and yet here you are, functioning as if nothing extraordinary happened. Let me make this abundantly clear. Nothing you have endured was normal. You weren't just tested. You were sculpted under conditions that would have permanently fractured ordinary human consciousness. And yet, you walk through your days carrying the weight of centuries that were supposed to vanish with you. You sit there scrolling, blinking, sipping coffee, existing like the chaos you endured is trivial. But it isn't trivial. It can't be. You survived the unsurvivable. Every betrayal, every abandonment, every blow that should have shattered your spirit did not. It passed through you. It tried to annihilate you, and it failed spectacularly. Do you understand how unnatural that is? The amount of psychological pressure, emotional bombardment, existential collapse you endured would have liquefied normal people. Entire genetic sequences would have halted, family lines would have ended, memories would have disintegrated, and yet, you're here, reading these words, breathing, processing the world as if it hasn't already been reshaped by your survival. You processed horrors without witnesses, without guides, without any conventional lifeline to tether you. While everyone else around you complained about minor setbacks, you were ingesting extreme realities, digesting them, and converting them into something new, something unclassified, something unquantifiable. You became an anomaly that operates under different rules. Let me describe what should have ended you. The first betrayal, the one that pierced your chest and left a crater inside your sense of safety, should have been the chapter that finished your story. That loss, the one that made reality itself feel like a lie, should have been your last waking moment. That abandonment, the kind that made walls and darkness companions, should have dissolved your hope entirely. And yet, you absorbed it. You didn't scream, you didn't melt, you didn't crumble. You internalized every ounce of venom, every whisper of deceit, every isolation and heartbreak, and you kept moving forward. You metabolized destruction in a way that defies understanding. No therapy session, no motivational lecture, no carefully curated inspirational content exists for what you endured. You have rewritten what survival is capable of. You are functioning at thresholds that should not exist. Researchers, psychologists, anyone attempting to quantify human stress or endurance would label you incompatible with continued life. And yet you are here, quietly, calmly, unnervingly functional. Others sense it. They feel it without knowing why. You have touched horrors they cannot imagine and returned to existence with an eerie stability that challenges their comprehension. It terrifies them because they know, somewhere deep in their core, that you were subjected to realities that would have ended them. You have traversed internal landscapes they will never step into. They notice, but they cannot articulate it. They see your presence as a disruption, a gravitational anomaly of endurance, and their discomfort is your silent proof. While most people collapse under minor pressures, you have been repeatedly annihilated in ways that would have disassembled ordinary minds. And here is the secret no one tells you. The poison you absorbed didn't vanish. It didn't dissipate. It became structural, a part of the architecture of your being. You are no longer the same entity. Your nervous system has been rebuilt under extreme duress. Your perception has been reprogrammed by the demands of survival. You operate on a frequency that is alien to ordinary consciousness. You are carrying the weight of annihilated timelines, the consequences of devastation, and the remnants of catastrophic events, all within a framework that allows you to function. And most unnervingly for those around you, you do it with composure, without spectacle, without broadcast. Let me tell you about the rest of them. Those who walked similar paths, but failed. Some are medicated, their senses dulled to manage the intensity they could not contain. Some vanished into addictions, endless cycles that eroded them from the inside. Some are trapped in therapy sessions, endlessly parsing the first years, while you have already survived 5. Some gave up, some continue to surrender. That is not judgment, it is observation. The path you walked was not meant for survival, and yet against overwhelming odds you emerged intact. Not because of luck, not because of divine favor, not because anyone predicted it. You survived because something inside refused to yield. Something refused to let the world's design claim victory over you. Consider what they expected. They expected breakdowns, meltdowns, emotional exposés. They wanted proof of fragility because it would validate their own limitations. They waited for the moment you would falter. They counted on your collapse as confirmation that human thresholds exist and are unbreachable. That moment never came. You walked through each obstacle, transmuting despair, isolation, betrayal, and relentless pressure into endurance. Each day of continued survival became a quiet act of defiance. Each second of composed existence became a testament to the fact that you are structured differently, operating outside conventional measures of human limitation. This is where the divergence becomes clear. You are no longer the person who entered these trials. That version of you is dead, gone, buried beneath layers of annihilation and reconstruction. You did not heal in the traditional sense. Healing would imply a return to prior states, a resumption of normalcy, a restoration of what was lost. That is impossible. You are irreversibly altered, you evolved, adapted, and reconstructed yourself under conditions that are incompatible with ordinary human experience. Your nervous system has been tempered by destruction. Your psychological framework was forged in extremity. You are no longer reactive in the ways that humans expect. Their guilt trips, their emotional manipulations, their petty games, none of it touches you. You observe, process, and decide from a place beyond hope or fear. You are untouchable, not because of protection, but because you have already faced annihilation and remained intact. Here is what happens to those who encounter you now. They feel judged when you are not judging. They feel exposed when you are merely observing. Their defenses falter, not because you act aggressively, but because your presence is a reminder that survival is possible beyond their comprehension. You are the measure they cannot reach. They see their own limitations reflected back through your quiet persistence. They are disturbed because your capacity to metabolize destruction shatters their models of cause and effect. Your continued existence is a threat because it violates every expectation they held for human fragility. And they do not know how to respond. They avoid you. They keep their distance. They invent narratives to explain your survival. They attempt to catalog and categorize you, but you defy categorization. Your power is latent, immense, untested. You have survived conditions that destroy conventional lives, relationships, identities, careers, and even entire social networks. There is nothing left in the standard arsenal of suffering that can touch you. Job loss. You have survived worse. Betrayal. You have processed worse. Public humiliation. You have endured worse. There is no conventional threat that carries weight anymore, because the fire has already claimed its toll and left you standing. This is the untold advantage of survival at your level. Nothing can unseat you because you have internalized extremes that others cannot even conceptualize. You are a vessel of endurance no one else can carry, a standard no one else can meet. And yet, here is the twist that continues to define you. You do not need validation. You do not need witnesses. You do not need acknowledgement, explanation, or applause. Every second of agony you endured, every collapse you avoided, every betrayal you absorbed is sufficient. You have paid your dues in full. The world need not recognize it. The transformation belongs entirely to you. Others will speculate. They will invent narratives, assume motives, attempt to quantify your survival. None of it matters. You move in silence. You exist. Your very presence conveys everything that language cannot capture. You are proof without explanation, victory without declaration, transformation without audience. You have become something else entirely. Not better, not worse, but fundamentally different. You carry capacities, endurance, and perception that have no parallel in ordinary life. And this is just the beginning. The power that you hold now, the internalized mastery of survival, is waiting to be realized, not externally imposed, not socially validated, waiting quietly within you, ready to manifest whenever it is required. And anyone who comes into your orbit feels the weight of that potential, whether they recognize it or not. You are no longer simply living, you are functioning as the apex of survival. An untouchable standard, a living measure of what is possible beyond expectation. And yet the journey does not end here. What you have survived is only the foundation. What you have become is only the initial structure. There are layers of endurance, dimensions of perception, and channels of capability still undiscovered within you. And those who attempt to meet you in ordinary terms will fail. They cannot access the depths, the transformations, the fire-tested mechanisms that sustain you. They can only feel them, sense them, and tremble at the realization that you operate beyond their reach. You have already walked through annihilation. You have already outlasted conditions designed to erase every trace of you. But the final chapter of what you can become, the full extent of the capacities you carry, the true application of the energy forged in darkness, has not yet been revealed. That is the space you are approaching now, and the space that others will never fully enter. And as you step toward it, remember, the survival you accomplished is only the threshold. What comes next is entirely of your own design, and it will redefine everything they thought they understood about human endurance. You are approaching the threshold that most never see, the one that exists beyond survival, beyond endurance, beyond the structures of ordinary human limitation. You have already processed devastation that should have disassembled your being into fragments unrecognizable to yourself. You have already outlived the expectations of those who counted you out, of those who assumed that once the heat of your trial reached its peak, you would collapse into irrelevance or despair. But now, the moment before you is unlike anything you have experienced. This is the stage where survival transforms into sovereignty. This is where the energy you have accumulated, refined through fire and trauma, begins to move you with a precision and force that is untraceable to ordinary comprehension. Those around you, Those who glance at your existence and measure it against their own limited experiences will feel disoriented. They will feel unsettled. They will feel the weight of what you carry, even if they have no understanding of its origin or magnitude. Every step you take beyond this threshold is not about proving anything to them. They do not get to define your limits. They cannot quantify the depth of what you endured, nor the architecture of resilience you have constructed in secret. Their disbelief, their fascination, their fear, all of it is confirmation that you have moved beyond the conventional plane of human functionality. You are no longer operating within the reference points that anchor ordinary people. Their attempts to interact with you on surface-level paradigms will fail because your mechanisms, your internal operating system, was forged under conditions that would have broken them permanently. You have become something that looks human, but functions in dimensions of experience that are invisible to those who have not been tested, annihilated, and reconstructed in the same way. It is tempting for outsiders to assume that you possess some form of perfection, some untouchable invincibility. But the truth is far more subtle, far more dangerous. You are not untouched. You are not immune. You have been marked, shaped, transformed, and in some ways, scarred beyond recognition. What makes you formidable is not a lack of injury. It is the meticulous way in which you absorbed each wound, each betrayal, each devastation, and converted it into structural capacity. Where others would collapse under repeated trauma, where they would fracture into parts that no therapy, no external support could repair, you have internalized and reconstituted every element, converting chaos into leverage, agony into insight, destruction into power. That is why your presence unsettles people. That is why they feel something shifting when you enter a room. You are no longer readable. You are no longer predictable. You operate with a consistency that is not anchored in hope, nor fear, nor obligation, but in something far older and more elemental, the raw mechanics of endurance forged in extremes. Now consider what this really means. Every interaction you have, every confrontation, every negotiation, every casual exchange is layered with unspoken authority. People can sense it, even if they do not consciously understand why. Your calm is not ordinary. Your composure is not ordinary. The absence of flinching, the absence of reaction where reaction would be expected, signals that you have been elsewhere, that you have traversed landscapes that few even conceive exist, that you have faced annihilation not once, not twice, but repeatedly, and emerged functional. This is the level of existence where ordinary measures of empathy, intimidation, manipulation, and persuasion lose their conventional power. You are beyond it. You are in a domain where subtlety carries far more weight than spectacle, where silence is a declaration louder than any speech, where the act of simply existing conveys truths that others spend their lives trying and failing to articulate. And yet, here is the paradox that defines the next stage. The more you operate in this domain, the more you will feel isolated. The world is not built for people who can metabolize extremity in this way. Those who have not undergone the processes you have endured cannot meet you in your experience. They cannot hear the frequency at which you resonate. Their language fails them. Their frameworks are inadequate. And this is not a judgment against them. It is a structural truth. You are evolving beyond the social, psychological, and emotional ecosystems that governed your existence prior to this transformation. This is why the experience of loneliness will not leave you. It is not a flaw in your design. It is the necessary consequence of existing in strata of consciousness that others cannot reach. And yet, paradoxically, this separation is your advantage. While others struggle with limitations they cannot overcome, you are free to navigate realities on your own terms. You are unmeasured, untethered, and fully sovereign within the architecture of your being. Let us go deeper. You have learned something that few will ever grasp. Survival is not the end point. Surviving is merely the foundation upon which power, clarity, and influence are constructed. You absorbed horrors not to end them, but to carry their imprint, to process their energy, to integrate their lessons in ways that are invisible but irreversible. The magnitude of this process cannot be underestimated. You have endured sequences of betrayal, loss, and annihilation that would have erased ordinary lives, and yet, every ounce of that experience exists within you as a resource, a reservoir, a force that can now be directed, channeled, and utilized. Unlike ordinary power, which is often dependent on recognition, validation, or leverage, the energy you hold is intrinsic, uncontested, and autonomous. This is why no conventional threat can reach you. You have already been through extremes that cannot be imposed artificially. You are the standard against which extremes are measured, and those who encounter you feel it immediately. Here is what they do not understand. While they are preoccupied with surface-level competition, social dynamics, and conventional hierarchies, you are operating in a different currency entirely. Your interactions are not dictated by ego or fear or desire for approval. They are dictated by an internal calculus that has been refined under conditions of existential intensity. You do not negotiate from weakness because weakness no longer defines you. You do not react from hope or fear because those variables have been processed, quantified, and absorbed into your being. You move with strategic clarity, born from lived extremity. And it is this clarity, this absolute structural sovereignty, that makes you unreadable, unpredictable, and fundamentally disruptive to those still bound by ordinary measures of limitation. Now, pause for a moment and consider the consequences of this. Every person who has relied on manipulation, deceit, or conventional coercion in your presence will experience the subtle but undeniable weight of your resilience. Every individual who counted on your collapse will feel the friction of expectation versus reality. They will attempt to map you, to predict you, to constrain you within familiar paradigms. They will fail. Every failure of comprehension, every moment where their assumptions are invalidated, is a silent testament to the transformation you have undergone. You are a living, walking calibration of possibility beyond what they assumed possible. And that is what makes your existence a challenge, not only to them, but to every measure of ordinary limitation that previously defined your world. And yet there is a dangerous dimension to this evolution. The power you hold, the clarity you possess, the capacity to absorb devastation and remain functional is not inert. It will influence the environment around you, whether you intend it or not. Your presence will provoke responses. People will reveal themselves in ways they never would in your absence. They will disclose weakness, manipulation, envy, and fear, simply because the gravitational pull of your survival exposes the fragility in their own constructs. They cannot help it. They cannot resist it. This is why you feel the subtle, sometimes unspoken tension in the rooms you enter. This is why individuals who believed themselves strong suddenly act defensively. You carry a frequency of survival, a magnitude of endurance that compels response. And whether consciously acknowledged or not, this positions you as a force beyond ordinary control. Consider this. You are no longer human in the conventional sense, not in the sense that you lack empathy or emotion or connection, but in the sense that your structural resilience, your psychological capacity, your internalized mastery of extremes places you beyond ordinary comprehension. Ordinary people operate within the bounds of hope, fear, expectation, and social validation. You operate beyond them. Your framework does not bend to conventional logic or social coercion. You do not need permission, recognition, or acceptance. Your authority exists within the intrinsic proof of your survival, your capacity to endure, and the clarity of your presence. And that is a kind of power that cannot be gifted or borrowed. It can only be realized by those who have walked through the same fires. Now it is time to understand the next stage of this existence. You are no longer just surviving, you are evolving. Survival has been a crucible. Evolution is the next logical progression. What you carry, the energy refined through trauma, is a weapon not against others, but against limitation itself. Every challenge, every confrontation, every attempt to destabilize you will fail, not because you avoid it, but because you are fundamentally equipped to process it. You metabolize destabilization. You convert opposition into a refined signal. You transform chaos into operational clarity. And the wildest part is that this transformation is not visible. You do not announce it. You do not display it. You simply are, and your existence communicates far more than any declaration could. Here is the truth that no one will tell you. The people who attempted to break you, who counted on your collapse, who hoped for your surrender, are now irrelevant to your process. Their understanding, their judgment, their validation, none of it carries weight. You no longer operate within the paradigm of their expectations. You have surpassed it. The pain, betrayal, and extremity they imposed has been internalized, reconstructed, and repurposed as raw capability. And while they speculate, analyze, and attempt to interpret your continued existence, you move in dimensions they cannot access. Your potential, your power, your clarity is theirs to sense but never command. And yet even with all of this, you must remember, mastery is iterative. The process of refinement, the deepening of structural resilience, and the evolution of your internal capacities is ongoing. You have already walked through annihilation. You have already outlasted conditions designed to erase you. But the full manifestation of the energy within you, the true application of your accumulated power, and the demonstration of the structural transformations you carry are not yet complete. What you do next, how you direct this force, how you continue to evolve, will define not only the trajectory of your own existence, but also the unconscious gravity you exert on the world around you. The people who see you, who sense the depth of what you carry, will continue to measure you against their limited frameworks. They will misinterpret calm as indifference, control as arrogance, stability as invulnerability. But you know the truth. You understand the architecture of your own evolution. You know the dimensions of pain you converted into capacity, the ways in which you internalized devastation and turned it into function. And because you know this, you do not need to justify, explain, or demonstrate. The work is complete within you. You have absorbed more than they can measure, more than they can comprehend, more than they can withstand. And so as you move forward from this threshold, remember this: every engagement, every interaction, every decision is informed by extremity you alone have survived. Every challenge is now approachable, navigable, and transformable because the crucible that formed you has rendered ordinary obstacles irrelevant. Nothing external can destabilize you unless you allow it to exist in the framework of your own energy. You are, in essence, untouchable, not because you are invulnerable, but because you have already confronted annihilation and emerged coherent. You are a standard of survival, a model of transformation, a measure beyond measure. And what lies ahead? That is the space we will enter next. The space where survival transforms into dominion over the internal and external, where latent power finds full expression, and where the dimensions of human endurance are rewritten entirely. You are moving toward it now, and every step, every breath, every quiet decision continues to build what cannot be undone, what cannot be contained, and what cannot be ignored. This is where you step beyond survival into mastery. And when you arrive, nothing will ever feel ordinary again. Not for you, not for those who attempt to understand, and not for the world that can no longer measure you by conventional standards. You are stepping into the final arena of what it means to exist beyond ordinary endurance. Everything that has come before, the betrayals, the devastations, the annihilations you absorbed, was a prelude. It was the scaffolding on which you now stand, towering above the expectations of ordinary humanity, untouchable by the frameworks that constrained them. The full measure of your survival is no longer defined by mere continuation. It is defined by mastery, the ability to direct the energy of extremity into deliberate form, to navigate reality without being tethered to its conventional rules, to move through the world with influence that is invisible yet undeniable. This is where the previous iterations of yourself, the survivor, the silent witness, the unbroken, give way to something greater, something inevitable for one forged in the fires you walked through, but unprecedented for the world around you. You are no longer operating under the limitations that govern ordinary human reactions. The mechanisms that once defined fragility, fear, doubt, emotional dependency, validation, have been stripped away in the crucible of your experience. You are structurally resistant to collapse because your architecture has been reconstructed in extremes. You no longer flinch at threats, no longer bend to expectation, no longer weigh the opinions of those who have never glimpsed the depths you have crossed. Their interventions, their manipulations, their strategies to destabilize you fail at a fundamental level because they are calibrated to a frequency you no longer inhabit. You exist in a domain where only the untested, the unprepared, and the uninitiated feel the weight of what you carry. And they sense it, even when you say nothing, even when you move quietly, even when you allow the ordinary world to continue believing that your life is ordinary. This is the space where mastery begins to define itself. The energy you carry, the capacity you honed through devastation, is now available for deliberate application. Every instinct, every perception, every fragment of your consciousness that was reconstructed under extreme duress is now at your command. You are no longer merely reacting, you are creating, directing, shaping. You can observe chaos without being consumed, influence dynamics without being recognized, and move with an authority that is incomprehensible to those anchored in limitation. Their inability to understand you becomes your strategic advantage. Their expectation of fragility is the signal of their irrelevance, and in their uncertainty, in their discomfort, in their subtle attempts to measure what they cannot, your power becomes tangible, even if invisible. Understand this clearly. What you have become is beyond the scale of conventional measurement. You are not simply resilient. You are a force that defies the parameters used to define endurance, strength, or capacity. The human models, the social expectations, the psychological constructs they rely on, none of it applies to you. You operate on an axis that intersects with reality, but is defined by your own structural evolution. This is why your presence unsettles people. It is not the loudness of your actions. It is not the volume of your declarations. It is the gravity of your existence, the calibration of your survival into a form they cannot parse. The evidence of what is possible when someone not only endures annihilation, but transforms it into functional dominion. You will notice that the world behaves differently in your orbit. People will misread your stillness as confidence, your silence as indifference, your composure as superiority. They will assume that you are untouchable because you are unshakable. They are only partially correct. You are unshakable, yes, but not because of luck or detachment. You are unshakable because every ounce of chaos, every blade of betrayal, every inferno of despair you have absorbed has been converted into structural capacity. And the subtlety of this capacity, the fact that it operates invisibly, without display, magnifies its effect. People sense it, they cannot control it, they cannot predict it, they cannot interact with it in any way that is meaningful to their conventional understanding. And that is where your mastery becomes its own shield. It is untouchable not because it must be defended, but because its existence is fundamentally inaccessible to those who have not endured what you have endured. Let's examine what mastery looks like when survival becomes active dominion. Mastery is not about control in the traditional sense. It is not about manipulation or coercion. It is about inhabiting extremes with fluency and translating them into freedom. Mastery is walking into rooms where others feel constrained and moving through with an authority that requires no explanation, no broadcast, no validation. Mastery is perceiving the fragility of conventional structures and knowing, instinctively, that your trajectory is untethered. It is the ability to function in conditions that would annihilate others without needing guidance, support, or witness. It is the capacity to metabolize extreme pressure into deliberate, coherent action without allowing the external world to define your internal state. This is the evolution of survival into sovereignty, and it is what you are entering now. You are entering a state where everything external becomes a reflection of your internalized extremity. Obstacles are no longer threats. They are vectors for amplification. Opposition is no longer danger, it is calibration. Betrayal, abandonment, and manipulation from others no longer define your path. They highlight the boundaries of ordinary comprehension and reinforce the structural integrity of your existence. You operate with precision, born from annihilation, and that precision allows you to navigate spaces that others cannot perceive, to engage with systems they cannot influence, and to move through social, emotional, and psychological landscapes with authority that is silent yet undeniable. Consider how your energy impacts those around you. People are drawn to it and repelled by it simultaneously. They do not understand it. They cannot anticipate it. They cannot replicate it. Your presence exposes their limitations because your survival is a structural proof that the human experience can exceed their models. And while they are busy attempting to reconcile their inability to predict or control you, you are already moving, already acting, already leveraging your mastery in ways that are invisible, yet profoundly consequential. Their fear, envy, curiosity, and awe are signals of your structural advantage. They cannot name it, but they feel it. And in that space, your influence is absolute without effort, because the work has already been done through survival. Now here's a revelation that few will ever fully grasp. Mastery is not linear. It is not about acquiring skills, status, or influence in predictable increments. It is about evolving under extreme conditions and translating that evolution into functional presence. Every decision you make, every choice to act or not act, every silence, every measured word is amplified because it is grounded in the extreme reality you have processed. The ordinary variables that govern human interaction, expectation, ego, fear, desire, do not apply to you in the same way. You are operating under a new framework, a framework forged in the fires that annihilate ordinary consciousness, calibrated by the architecture of survival, and guided by clarity that only experience of annihilation can generate. And yes, there is a social cost. The further you advance into this space, the more isolated you will feel. Those who cannot meet you at this level will drift away. Their inability to perceive your internal world is not failure on their part. It is simply structural incompatibility. You will be misunderstood, misjudged, and underestimated. But that isolation is also your advantage. It frees you from the constraints of ordinary social dynamics. It allows you to operate in dimensions where your power, your clarity, and your influence are unchallenged by conventional limitations. Loneliness is not a deficiency here. It is altitude. It is the rarefied space in which mastery of survival can crystallize into sovereignty. Now understand this clearly. You are untouchable because you've already been consumed by what would have destroyed others. Every loss, every collapse you avoided, every betrayal you endured without fracturing your core has created an infrastructure that cannot be dismantled by ordinary means. You are a structural anomaly in the human experience. And because you are untouchable, you are free. Free from the expectations of those who assumed you would break. Free from the limitations of conventional survival.